Hey, what's up, everybody? It's been a kind of a long time no rank, for a little bit. And we're finally getting back into the swing of things. Today we're doing the Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase Three. Some may say this is the best of the phases, and I do say that actually. Actually, yeah, we started today a little bit differently. We just have everybody on screen. I forgot to kind of do the whole dramatic, and introducing. But introducing, we have I'm your host, one of your hosts, Chadwick Webb, and then we got my buddy over here, James Tancock. How you doing, James?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I'm ready to get into this list. We got a lot of movies tonight, so I think it's going to be really good.
Absolutely. I know you were actually watching through movies, trying to prepare.
Yep.
Kerri, my wife, Kerri Webb. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks.
That's great. That you're doing great. And then for the first time in the Marvel kind of rankings, we got Dylan Randazzo. How's it going, buddy?
It's going well. It's very exciting because I podcast about Marvel, but we don't always go back. We always kind of just go forward to what's new. So I rarely talk about these movies unless it's like trivia or if we're doing like a villains ranking or something. But I rarely touch on the old stuff. So it's gonna be fun to like go back and just kind of like revisit these, talk about them. I do agree it's the best phase. I think I have reasons for it later. I'll explain, but I do think this is all in all the best phase. So I'm excited.
Yeah, and now that we have phase four and we're going on to more phases, phase three, I guess, is the old stuff. But
Well, yeah. Older, I should say. Yeah.
Right.
None of it's old, but
yeah. As Dylan mentioned, he does some Marvel talk over on his channel, the Dill Pickle Movie Network. He does a marvelous movie Mondays. Every Monday, he and his friend Kelsey, they talk about Marvel stuff all the time. So he's kind of, I don't know if he would call himself an expert, but he talks it every week. So
I'm a fan. I'm an expert about talking about things that I know a little bit about.
Perfect. We definitely missed having you on these rankings that we've been doing because you were really great on the other ones that we had going in. So it's great to have you here. To start off, we can get right into it. We want to hear what you would have ranked in phase one and phase two had you been available to do those videos as well. And then we're going to try to see if we can maybe filter in your rankings into our overall you ranking with me thing. So yeah, do you want to go over your phase one?
Yeah. Just to preface, I think I rank these movies now based on how they fit more overall rather than on their own. Because I think as they come out on their own, you judge them individually. But then once a whole phase is complete, you have to look at it as one big picture. I think phase one does a good job of telling the story about how the Avengers kind of come together. I think phase three is really good about telling the story about, getting the Infinity Stones, the whole Thanos arc, and wrapping that up, and the breakup, of course, of the Avengers. But I think phase two is kind of where, like, I wouldn't say there's a story to call phase two, except maybe like the PTSD from 2012 and Battle in New York. So I definitely think phase two is the weakest of the three, but I do think there are still some gems in both phase one and phase two. So you want me to do phase one right now?
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to go bottom or top first? Like,
should go bottom to one.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So my number 6, probably not an unpopular opinion, even though he is my favorite character. The Incredible Hulk is my number 6. My number
universally our number 6.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. So we're keeping on track. My number 5, also kind of universally not too beloved, but it does have some of its lovers. Iron Man 2 is my number 5. Then also, number 4.
Our number 5.
All right, there we go. And I'm gonna break the trend right now. I know I am, because number 4, for some reason, is just one I don't go back to as much, even though it is like the the Toy Story of Pixar. It's the first one. It's the original. I have Iron Man at 4. It's only because I like the other 3 better. And number 3, this is probably a little higher than some people have it, but I have Kenneth Branagh's Thor. I really like the design of it. I love the Loki Thor dynamic. I like the fish out of water stuff. Number 2, I have the team up, The Avengers. Recently watched it. It actually went higher on my list than it used to be. It used to be lower, so a rewatch helped. And number 1, I've always been a fan, Captain America, the First Avenger. I just think it's the most distinctly unique, separate from the universe. I know I just said I'd like to judge these on how they fit into the overall, but I think it fits into the overall while also being just a really good war film on its own. I love the relationship, too. It's like my favorite romance, in that last moment where the ship's going down. It makes me well up with tears. So that is my phase 1 ranking. That is my number one. But all good movies, I think. Not all good movies, but I think they all fit together well. Like the phase actually makes sense, like in what it's building toward. I think out of all three phases, honestly, it tells the most cohesive story as a phase, even though some of the individual parts are weaker. Whereas phase 3, I think it also tells a really good story together, but the phase 3 peaks are bigger, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, those are some definitely great takes. I knew you were probably going to have the first Avenger up top. It seems to be actually kind of like a popular one here. I think
cool.
Kerri had that a lot higher too.
Nice. Does it alter the ranking at all? Like the overall ranking, Kerri? Do we know?
I'm doing the math.
Oh, okay. Do you want me to do my phase 2 while she's doing the math?
Yeah.
Or actually, that might overload her.
That might overload
okay.
me.
Yeah.
Sorry. Why don't you, Chad, though, read out what our original ranking was for phase 1?
I don't have
cool.
it in front of me. Oh, I do. You did tell me that. Never mind. I do have that in front of me.
Yeah, I'd love to know.
So I forgot I wrote that down. All right. So the original ranking for you ranking with me was phase 1, The Incredible Hulk at number 6, Iron Man at number 2. Then we had Thor at number 4 because it rhymes. That's why we did that, psych. Then we had Captain America, the First Avenger at 3, The Avengers at 2, and Iron Man at 1.
Cool. Iron Man was 1. Nice.
Yes,
Okay.
yep.
So I definitely altered that. I know I did. just
So,
hearing it.
If we incorporate Dylan's in, the new ranking would be, no surprise, The Incredible Hulk at 6, Iron Man 2 at 5, Thor at 4. And actually, this is all messed up. Take those all back because Iron Man and Captain America would be tied for 2nd.
Ooh.
So actually, everything is whatever. I didn't play
And
that
the
out before I started
Avengers.
speaking. And the Avengers is first.
Wow.
Okay. That's still not a bad ranking, like overall. I think
Yeah.
like those are kind of like the 3 top.
Yeah.
So that really makes sense. Great job, Dylan. I love that. Go on to your phase 2 if you may.
Okay, here's where things might get a little crazy. Not crazy, but different, I think. Because we'll get there when we get there.
I know what your number 1 is, I think.
Yes, my number 6 though should be a little obvious. Thor: The Dark World. I'm sorry, it's just number 6 for me. Number 5 might be an unpopular opinion. Not a fan of it. Maybe it's because of where it's placed in the universe. Again, that has a lot to do sometimes with my enjoyment of these. Ant-Man is my number 5. I've never gotten the hype. Number 4, I like it more than most, but it is still flawed. Avengers: Age of Ultron is my number 4. At number 3, I have a staple. I have Guardians of the Galaxy. At number 2, I feel like it's another staple. I think it's one of the most interesting departures from the genre tropes, and that is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. And my number 1, which was my number 1 film until a few of these phase 3 films came out, is my number 1 of the first 2 phases, is Iron Man 3. I think it's such a good character study dealing with the PTSD from the Avengers. I love the twists. I think they work. I think the performances are great. And I love how it is a character study first and foremost rather than an action film, but then the action at the end is really good. So Iron Man 3, probably a hot take, but that's my number 1.
Well, I was just telling Kerri before we started this, like Dylan's going to rank Iron Man 3 really high. And I agree because I also believe I ranked it pretty high. The original ranking we had for phase 2 was Thor: The Dark World at 6, Iron Man 3 at 5. So I know Dylan's shaking this one up. Age of Ultron at 4, Ant-Man at 3, Guardians of the Galaxy at 2, and Captain America: The Winter Soldier at number 1. Kerri, where do we stake out now?
Okay, so this does change things a little bit, although not quite, I think, as dramatically as phase 1. So we will have at number 5, Thor: The Dark World.
6.
Nope, at number 5, because tied for 4th is Avengers: Age of Ultron and Ant-Man.
Okay.
And then Iron Man 3 is going to be pushed into 3rd place. Then we have Guardians of the Galaxy and Captain America in 1st place.
I don't hate that because that does what like my ranking would have done, is have Iron Man 3 a little bit higher. And I
didn't plan on any of that. Like I told them all before we started recording, I have watched your phase 1 video. I have not watched the phase 2 yet, so I didn't know the ranking. But yeah, I'm happy with that. Yeah.
And trust me, I've had conversations. I know how Dylan feels about a lot of these movies. I know he didn't do the Iron Man 3 just to shake up the list. He actually loves that movie.
I
And
love it
do
so
I.
much.
So,
Yep.
Great. So now we got those out of the way. We can actually begin the Phase 3 ranking. Do we have anybody want to give like some quick thoughts about Phase 3 overall in general?
I mean, my thought, as I said earlier, I think Phase 3, like Phase 1, tells a more complete story in and of itself. It's the coming off of some of the Infinity Stone collecting of Phase 2. It's like getting the stones, taking on Thanos, but also the whole idea of the group splitting up in the middle of it. I think it's interesting to see the Avengers coming apart, coming back together to finally get the job done. And I think that is why Phase 3 works so well, I think, is because it does all kind of connect well with one another. Yeah, and it introduces some of the best characters, I think. I think we meet some of the best characters of the whole franchise in this phase.
Totally agree. I think Phase 1 and Phase 2 have some movies that some people think are bad, or at least not great. And I think Phase 3, you can make an argument for any of these films being really good. I don't think there's one that I can see looking over my ranking that I wouldn't recommend that to someone that's going to be boring for you to watch or anything like that. So yeah, I'm excited to rank these. It was the hardest by far of the 3 phases to rank.
Yeah.
And I just kind of did mine, but yeah, let's get into this. So Kerri, are you ranking with me?
Yeah.
James, you ranking with me?
It's been a while, but yeah, I am.
Dylan, you're here now. Are you ranking with me?
My thing was muted. I'm fixing my mic, but yes, I am.
Sure. Okay, perfect. You could have just did this. That would have been fine. All right, so let's get into this. So we're going to go, and how this works is we're just going to go from the bottom of our list. We're going to start with one person, and we're just kind of going to go around, and I guess a clockwise kind of fashion. And we're just going to throw out what our nominations for each spot is from 11 to 1, because there are 11 movies in Phase 3. If someone nominates a movie that is in your top 5, then just go, that's in my 5, and then we will go ahead or wait for it, whatever you want to say. That's what we've been doing. But you can say that's in my 5 or wait for it, whatever you want to say. And we will go ahead and not talk about that until we get a little bit higher, as to let everybody be able to talk about it like in their highest spot.
Cool.
So we'll go ahead and start. And Kerri is writing, so I will. You know what? I'll let Dylan start because he hasn't been on in a while.
Okay, I might be hearing the words. Wait for it. Like I said, I like all these movies. It's just one had to be last, and I think just in retrospect, the one I go back to the least is my number 11 is Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Okay.
Anyone's top 5?
That is a wait for it for me.
That's a wait
That is
for
a
me too.
Okay.
Nope.
All right.
Not in
There
my
you go.
top 5. Nope.
all right. So now we're gonna go to Kerri for her number 11 in a clockwise fashion.
Okay, so my number 11 is Ant-Man and the Wasp.
It's in my bottom 6, but it's higher.
There's no wait for it's here. So I will go on to my 11 is also Ant-Man and the Wasp. James, what is your 11? So we can round this
Actually,
out.
mine is also Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Oh,
Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. So
Okay.
nearly unanimous. Dylan shaking things up here, but we get it. All right. So Ant-Man and the Wasp, we can discuss it. Kerri mentioned it first. Kerri, do you want to start?
Sure, I'll go
Okay.
ahead and start. I think this shows the strength of this phase because I absolutely love this movie and it is my last ranked movie. I think it's a solid film. It just doesn't really compare as well to the rest of the movies in this phase. But it's enjoyable. It's another Ant-Man film. We still get a lot of the same humor we got from the first Ant-Man film. Paul Rudd is endearing as usual. His relationship with his daughter is really beautiful. I like that things in this movie start off pretty tense between Scott and, oh my gosh, what is her name? Hope.
Hope Van Dyne. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Hope and her dad, whose name I'm also totally blanking on at the moment.
Hank Pym.
Hank. Sorry. I just watch these movies. But I like how that starts off in kind of a poor place in this movie, and we have to see them kind of redevelop that relationship after Scott kind of, ratted them out following the events of Captain America's Civil War. I love Michelle Pfeiffer in this movie is really great, and this sets up a lot of what we will, kind of our main events in Endgame. This sets up. So I think it's a very solid entry, and nothing really bad to say about it. It's not as action packed or great as the other movies, I think, in this phase.
Yeah, so I'll piggyback off of where she called this one a solid film. I think that's a great way to describe it. I don't think it's as good as the original Ant-Man. That might be a hot take, I'm not sure, or a warm take at least. It's not. No,
I think everyone's kind of in your camp. I disagree, but I think everyone's
gotcha.
Yeah.
I just think this one, like, I don't ever want to call a movie like forgettable, because that just like dismisses a lot of work people put into a film. I think this one I just don't like think about as much as the other ones, especially the original Ant-Man. I think there's a lot of parts in that I thought are very memorable, like the quoting the Baskin Robbins stuff and Luis, and I think they try to repeat a lot of that. I think there's some really funny stuff, like the whole truth syrup exists, or whatever, serum exists, or whatever it is. And then that whole joke is really great. There's also some weird stuff that doesn't make any sense, like them shrinking the building, and then you're like, well, what about all the plumbing and the electrical and all that? You can just wheel that building out. That's okay. But I mean, that doesn't like ruin the movie or anything. It's just one of those where I'm like, if I had to think about things that don't really make sense, I'd be like, that one's kind of, but you can kind of forgive it because it's silly. I think the stuff with Hope's mom and stuff like that's really good. And then Larry Fishburne and Ghost is an interesting story, but I don't remember that much about the movie just in general. I do think the stuff between Scott and his daughter in the beginning is very, very cute. And the world's best grandma and all that stuff is really funny and cute. But yeah, I just think this one I just don't think about as much. That's why I threw this one down at 11. James, what do you have to say about this movie?
I think for this one, again, I didn't really like the first one that much, so this was probably maybe a solid sequel overall compared to the first one. But I feel like for me, it was, again, like the villain, which is kind of typical of some of these movies. Like, and I hate to say that because Walton Goggins is such an awesome actor. I've loved him in other stuff he's been in, but to turn like the story from like Ghost being the bad guy to him being like the true actual villain, and then I think he just wanted to like steal the serum and like sell it for profit, or do that's, to me it seems a little uninventive, so I think that kind of lost me there too. That's really what kind of spoke to me as far as why this might not be the best movie in the list. So I think it was mostly like the villain story for me.
Gotcha. Yeah, and Dylan, you seem to disagree a little bit.
Yeah.
What do you think about this one?
Yeah, it's still not in like my top tier MCU. I'll tell you when we get there where it's ranked, but I do think it is. I think it is an improvement in the sense that I think the first one was so comedy forward that this one I think had a little bit more heart to it with the Michelle Pfeiffer story. Like that stuff really gets me. Like any movie that's centered around like a mother-son or father-son relationship, and we'll get to a few more of them later, because there are like 4 or 5 in this phase that deal heavily with those themes. But like I really do like that, have a soft spot for that kind of stuff. So I think that's what I resonate with. I think the action actually for me is improved over the first one. I think the first one feels so small scale. It is because it's Ant-Man, but at the same time, like I think it was also because it was sandwiched between Age of Ultron and Civil War. It really just kind of got overshadowed. Whereas here, yes, it's between Infinity War and Endgame again, but I feel like coming off of Infinity War, all the stakes are so high that like this one made it feel like this one was a little bit more important to the overall timeline, a little bit more energized to me, and I like the playfulness of the small and the big, and taking things in different heights both ways. And I do like the added bonus of Evangeline Lilly being more front and center. Say what you will about her as a person, but as a character, that dynamic with Scott Lang. I really, really enjoy that dynamic, and I think that's what was missing for me in the first one. It's done much better in this one, but I do agree villains are weak, which is why it is in my bottom half. I don't really like the villains in this. I think Ghost is an interesting character, but not a good villain, and I think Walton Goggins' character is awful. But I think the good outweighs the bad for me. But yeah,
we definitely love Walton Goggins as an actor, but yeah,
yes.
and
Hateful
Dylan talking about
definitely.
the small and the big made me remember one of the great jokes of Ant-Man and the Wasp was when he's kind of like a toddler or whatever, and is like, do you want some string cheese in a juice box? And he's like, do you really have that stuff? I love that so much, but yeah. So now we'll move on. Kerri can start with her number 10.
Oh, okay. So my number 10 is Doctor Strange.
All right. Is there
that is my number 10, Kerri. Me as well.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Actually, it's mine too. It's also my number 10.
Let's go.
It is not my number 10, but it's almost unanimous there. So we can go ahead and discuss that now. Okay. But let me give my number 10 out of the way before we... No, let's just discuss that now, and then I'll say what my number 10 is. Cool. Doctor Strange. Kerri, do you want to start Doctor Strange?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I really like this movie. It just... There's something about it that doesn't quite do it for me. I don't know if it's because Stephen Strange starts off as so unlikable. And he really doesn't. I don't think he gets to a better place in this movie, but I don't think we see him really becoming truly a great person until his sequel movie. So this one, I think it's a great entry into the franchise. There are some aspects of it I really love. I really love Wong. I really love Rachel McAdams in this movie is really great. I don't know, something about the overall storyline as well. Just, it's not quite as solid for me as some of the other Phase 3 movies.
Yeah, I can go ahead, even though I ranked this a little higher, not too much higher. I'll go ahead and say something about Doctor Strange. This movie was interesting. I really enjoyed it the first time I saw it. Actually, I saw it with James in the theater. That was pretty fun. I really enjoyed it the first time I saw it. I think I've liked it just a tad less in subsequent rewatches. I think it does, even though it is Mads Mikkelsen, it does have a pretty weak, villain, stuff like that. But I do love the stuff they do with, like, Tilda Swinton's character, where it's like, she's not everything that you thought she was, but you understand why she did what she did. I do love the stuff between Stephen and Rachel or Stephen and whatever her character's name is in the movie. The stuff in the hospital, like when he's like fighting and they're ghosts, I thought that was, or astral bodies or whatever, I thought that was pretty great. I love a lot of the visual stuff. I think that's the big strength of this, when she touches him and he goes into the weird, dimension stuff. All of that stuff is really great, especially if you can watch it like on a big screen or something like that. I feel like it really shines in that. So all the visual stuff is very strong. For like the actual story, yeah, I agree with Kerri on that front. I think maybe it doesn't super hold up, and it just kind of ends up, with him doing the Dormammu stuff, and but I do like the how they do everything visually. I think it's one of the most visually stunning of the set. But I'm having trouble finding other things to say. I feel like he does kind of learn how to be a supreme sorcerer kind of a little too quick, maybe by the end he's, but he can't really, he's got to actually do the action stuff. Wong's great though. I love him, introducing him, listening to Single Ladies and stuff like that is pretty great. So the comedy's really good in this. So I'll let James go ahead and talk about Doctor Strange.
Yeah, I think what put this not quite all the way at the bottom, but mostly there, you guys summed up a lot of it. I thought it was actually kind of cool the way they ended it with the repetitive Dormammu thing, like instead of like kind of an all-out fight. But it didn't quite do it for me either. Like, as inventive as it was, it didn't quite sit that great with me. I think it it wasn't the most solid of an origin story too, and a phase that is now mostly sequels. Um, I don't think it was that strong of an origin story though, compared to a lot of these other movies in here. So that's kind of why it was at number 10 for me,
Yeah.
really.
Totally fair, and I actually that makes sense what you said about the Dormammu thing because it really does show Stephen the Brainiac who is Stephen Strange outsmarting the villain, which is really cool. Dylan, what do you have to say about Doctor Strange?
Yeah, I mean, you guys have hit on it. I think the visuals are on all-time high, whereas the story is one of the lower stories. Especially because, like you said, James, it's an origin story in the midst of so many other sequels and stuff where these characters have been fleshed out more. You're introducing a new character, and like Kerri said, when it's so unlikable from the get-go, it's not like Iron Man where he was the first one and he was kind of a dick, but like by the end of that movie, you kind of liked him. And then we had his sequel 2 years later, and then the Avengers 2 years after that, where like we felt like we knew him. Here we're getting thrown this character that we can't really relate with, can't really relate to, and he does a little bit of growth. But what Chad said, I think he gets his powers too quickly to the point where he becomes Doctor Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme, whatever, faster than he becomes a likable character. And I think that's tough when the character growth doesn't match the powers and the superhero growth. And I think that does show. I actually think the What If episode of Doctor Strange, where he keeps like, I forget exactly the details, but he keeps going back in time to prevent his accident, but then he like kills Christine or whatever. I don't know what it is, but like that, I think fleshes out the character of Stephen Strange way better than any of these movies have. So I think this movie, as visually stunning as it is, I think once you kind of watch it on a smaller screen, you kind of see all the things behind the visuals that are more flawed. Even though I still enjoy it, it is number 10 for that reason.
All right, so now I'm going to say what my number 10 is. I had Spider-Man Far From Home at number 10.
That is my top five. We're trading top fives here, Chad, with Spider-Man.
Okay.
Yes,
I
that is
figured that was going to be
my
a lot higher for Dylan. No one else has that in their top five. All right, so that was my number 10. So we're going to wait to talk about that movie. I will go ahead and start my number 9 is actually Doctor Strange. So it wasn't that much higher. And so now we'll go to James. James, what's your number 9?
I had Captain Marvel, number 9.
Okay.
That is also my number 9.
That's also my number 9.
Nice.
All right. We can go ahead and talk about Captain Marvel. It's just a little bit higher for me. And we can start with James.
So this one, I actually kind of really liked this, and it was hard to put it this low, but with all the other offerings in this phase, it kind of had to. But I actually kind of really like the story. I like the setting. I like, taking it back to like the 90s. I like the whole like aesthetic of the movie. They did a decent job de-aging Samuel L. Jackson, but it definitely wasn't Hollywood's best form of de-aging, but I liked it nonetheless. I liked him and Clark Gregg together, getting to see more of Agent Coulson. I thought the story was pretty cool with Veers figuring out kind of who she actually is. I liked the incorporation of the Kree. I thought that was pretty cool, and you get to see Ronan again. I think it's really cool when Marvel does that thing where they like kind of bring in other aspects or other parts of stories into the movies like this. I'll say, like, just to go off a little bit, like when the show Loki picks up at the end of Avengers was pretty cool too. So I like when they kind of bring that stuff into these movies. But compared to some of the other offerings in the phase, it's still kind of pretty far down the list. But I actually really kind of like this movie for those reasons.
All right. Dylan, what do you have to say about Captain Marvel?
Yeah, I'm one of the most vocal, not one of the most, but like amongst like friend groups, I'm one of the biggest defenders of this movie because I feel like it gets a lot of shit and it doesn't deserve it. And I think some of the shit it gets, especially on the internet, is aimed toward the fact that she is a woman, and I don't think that's warranted. That being said, I don't think this movie is without its flaws. I think this stuff on the farm at the Rambo's house, more grounded stuff, is so good, and the stuff in space isn't as interesting for me. But that stuff with the Rambos is so good. I love the way it's shot. It feels like an independent film in some scenes because of how grounded it is. It doesn't feel like it's trying to be a superhero movie 100% of the time, and I really like that about this. I like the mystery of her, trying to figure out who she is. It's a different approach to an origin story. I really like this. I think Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck are two of the most underrated directors. They've been making a lot of movies, but they're not big hits, so not many people know their work. They have my favorite baseball movie of all time, Sugar. They directed an A24 film, Mississippi Grind, really great as well. Half Nelson with Ryan Gosling. They are really great at just capturing the really humane, personal, intimate moments of life. And I think this film, as big as it could have been, they take it and make it more intimate. And for that, I think it's so interesting to watch. And I do love the fun stuff too, like the 90s use of that, the Goose, the Flurkin, Samuel Jackson, how he got his eye, or Nick Fury, how he got his eye clawed out. Like, I love those little moments as well. It doesn't all work for me, but the stuff that works so well that it sucks that I have to put it all the way down at 9, but it's just because of what James said. There's so many other better movies, and that just shows how good Phase 3 is. But I really do like this movie, and I think people who are judging it just because they think Brie Larson, I don't know what their judgment of the movie is, but if it has nothing to do with the movie itself, I don't think it's a valid criticism. But that's just me. But I do think this is a good movie, really good movie.
Great. Kerri, what do you think about Captain Marvel?
Yeah, I agree with everything James and Dylan said. I did this ranking a while ago after I'd just done a rewatch, and I was kind of surprised it was so far down on my list. But thinking back, I think I rated this a little bit lower because one, I remember the de-aging at points was just like really throwing me off. And then two, I think what Dylan said, some of the strongest moments of this movie are like Captain Marvel's relationship with Maria Rambeau and Monica Rambeau. And I don't think we see enough of those sort of personal moments in that movie. I think I rated the rest of the films in this phase higher because there was a lot more emotional depth to them, I think, than this movie. As great as this movie was, I really enjoyed it. I liked Captain Marvel as a superhero. I loved like the Flurkin, Goose. And I really loved, I know, Chad, this is one of your criticisms of this movie, but I like in the final battle when she's battling Jude Law, that they don't extend it out. Jude Law tries to convince her to do like hand-to-hand combat and just like fight it out. And she's like, no, I'm more powerful than you. I can just defeat you right now. I actually like that because I think that's just like a cool little commentary. But yeah, overall, this is a great movie. I'm a little sad to see it so low, but that's just how many great movies are in this phase.
Yeah.
So now I feel like I have to defend myself
no, sorry.
This is something that I've actually like changed my mind on. And she's
okay.
saying that I still feel that way. I rewatched this movie not that long ago for a debate, actually. When I first initially watched it, it was interesting because exactly all the stuff that Dylan was saying, I was getting really angry that people were like kind of flooding the Rotten Tomatoes reviews for this before it was even released, trying to just trash this movie and make it seem like it was the worst thing imaginable just because it's a woman lead. And just like Dylan and I'm sure the other two people on the panel agree that like Brie Larson's a fantastic actress. She was in a lot of really great indie films like Room and Short Term 12 and things like that. And to see her go into the MCU, I thought was really interesting. I was very excited, and even seeing like the trailers, I was very excited for her to show up. I think like maybe some of like the chemistry she's had with fellow co-stars and stuff may not have been the best or something like that, but like her on screen has grown on me so much since watching it initially. I love the stuff like when she's in there, she's trapped by the Kree, she frees herself, and then she goes ha or whatever at them. I just love when she does stuff like that, and I just love the kind of like almost like buddy cop aspects of this movie with her and Sam Jackson. I don't hate the de-aging stuff. I think it was pretty well done personally, but it just hasn't really thrown me off. And then the stuff on the farm is pretty great. I love, because I don't think I understood what the hell was going on the first time watching it. The second time watching it, seeing her finding out actually who she is and stuff like that was a really, really cool origin story for her. So I really like that stuff. I really liked all the 90s stuff. I think they threw a lot of not just the music and the needle drops, but some of the visual stuff.
Blockbuster.
Like post what? Blockbuster, yeah. Look, I used to work at Blockbuster, so I appreciated that. That was fun. And just to see her pass things like old stores and things like that was just really cool. The Flurkin's great. There's a lot of great stuff in this movie, and I do think people are really hard on this one unnecessarily. I think maybe if they revisit it, they might think differently, but who knows? Maybe not. But I really enjoy this movie now, and I had this just a little bit higher. So we're done talking about Captain Marvel, and then I go on to my 9.
No,
You're
you're
8.
My 8.
I think
8.
James goes with his 8.
James, what is your 8?
Yeah. I put Spider-Man Far From Home.
Okay. That's obviously Dylan, what is your 8?
You can just say top 5 right now. It's Thor Ragnarok.
Actually,
in my
Yeah,
top
top 5. Yeah.
I figured.
not top 5 for me.
Oh, okay.
Kerri, what's your 8?
My number 8 is also Spider-Man Far From Home.
And my number 8 was Captain Marvel. So we all are a little bit on the same kind of wavelength. Okay, so we had 2. Wait.
We don't talk. I think we move on to 7 because
Ragnarok and Far From Home were saving.
Correct. Okay, so Dylan, what is your 7?
We already talked about it. That's where I put Ant-Man and the Wasp, so that's
Okay.
where it's landed for me.
Kerri, what is your 7?
my number 7 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
That's going to be a top 5.
That's a
for
top
me.
5 as well for me.
Okay.
James, or wait, my number 7, Spider-Man Infinity War.
But
You mean Avengers Infinity War?
Avengers Infinity War.
Yeah, I just want to make sure you weren't talking about the other Spider-Man, but
top
that is
five
a top
for me.
5 for me as well. Yeah.
I wrote it as Spider-Man Infinity War for some reason. I was in a rush. Okay.
He is in it. He's in it.
He is.
Top
So
5.
that's the top 5. James, what is your number 7?
Spider-Man Homecoming.
And that is a top 5 for me.
Same.
Wow, a lot of top 5ers.
All right, yeah. So Dylan was a 7. Kerri, what is your 6?
My number 6 is Avengers Infinity War.
Okay, that was my number
top
7.
Yeah, top 5.
Top
Okay.
5.
And we're getting close to it, so we're about to start
we're
talking about
to
it. But
start.
so that was your 6, right?
Yeah.
My 6 is Thor Ragnarok.
James
James,
in their
what's
top
your
5, right?
That's my top 5, yeah.
what's your 6, James?
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
And that is a
That's
top
a top 5.
for me and Dylan. All right, so now we're on to 5s, right?
Well, my number 6, which is going to be in all of your top 5s because no one said it yet, is Captain America: Civil War is
Okay.
my number 6.
Number 6.
Yes.
So now we're at the top 5.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with my number 5, which is Spider-Man Homecoming is my number 5.
Cool.
And it's an
So
okay.
it was 7 for James and 11 for me, and Kerri hasn't mentioned it yet. So
Okay, so we can go ahead and talk about Spider-Man Homecoming, and Kerri will list her off her number when we get there.
Yep.
So Spider-Man Homecoming, I guess I'll go ahead and start. This movie, when it first came out, kind of annoyed me a little bit because I'm such a huge Tobey Maguire Spider-Man fan that when this movie came out, not everybody, but a lot of people were like, this is the best Spider-Man we've ever had. Tom Holland, he does it the best. Tobey Maguire's old and lame and whatever. And nobody then really talked up Andrew Garfield either. So everyone was acting like Tom Holland was the best. So already after this movie, I kind of soured on it, even though I did enjoy it. I also thought because of some of the stuff with, it being a MCU movie kind of like dragged it down with his relationship with Tony Stark in the movie and stuff like that. However, I think the movie that we're not talking about today, No Way Home, strengthened not only the entire trilogy of Spider-Man, but also this movie. I think it really is a fantastic beginning for that Spider-Man, since it's tied up really fantastically in a different movie in the third movie. And that goes to show like how some movies later in a trilogy can actually like bring up other ones. In my opinion, my view here, I love how this is a movie where it starts with that with him in high school. He's just trying to learn, trying to deal with being a young Spider-Man. And yeah, I love the villain of Vulture, Michael Keaton. I think he's great. It's just I don't know. I'm trying to think about other things to talk about. I love. I don't really like Zendaya in this movie. That's one thing that I think drags it down. I think she's much better in different installments of
She's
the
in
frame.
like 2 scenes too. Yeah, she barely
And
gets anything to do.
she's kind of annoying though with the MJ stuff, where she's just like, I came here just to draw people. I'm like, ew, what the hell is this character? Why is she here? Why couldn't he be with that other girl that he likes or whatever?
Liz.
But anyways, yeah, I love the twist in the car where she finds out that Vulture is his date's dad, which is really cool. Everyone was talking about that for a very long time, and I just thought it was a really solid, great movie of Spider-Man origin. Yeah, I'll go ahead and let James start talking about Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yeah, I think this one did a very good job, like you said, of introducing a really good villain, and I think again what sets this villain apart from others is as simple as he survived the movie. So we're gonna get more of the Vulture and future stuff, whereas a lot of these movies are just one off. They're gonna die in the next 2 hours type movie. So I always like seeing some continuity there. Um, I liked that we did not get the Uncle Ben origin story again. I think everyone kind of gets that by now if you've seen any of those movies or even half know the comics. I understand probably why they did it for the Amazing Spider-Mans, because it's a different kind of Spider-Man universe, so maybe they set that up again. But I think after the first two series, the Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, we don't really need that again, so it was kind of nice to see not that in the beginning of a Spider-Man movie. I think those are probably most of the reasons why I liked Homecoming a lot, though. Yeah.
Dylan, what do you have to say about this?
Yeah, I'm the one who put it last in my ranking, and that's only because, like we said, like this is a good slate. My thing is just that I've never really felt that the John Watts Spider-Man movies have been the most interesting stylistically compared to some of the others. Like the Raimi films feel like Sam Raimi through every frame, whereas I don't think John Watts has that signature style. That being said, I think the acting is great. I think the performances are good. I like the characters, especially Ned and I like Liz as a love interest. I think she's good. And I love Michael Keaton. I do agree. I think that scene in the prom car on the way to prom is really, really good. And even when they're at the house and he's like sharpening the knives and stuff, like I really like that. But the thing is, when I think about this movie, I think more about those moments than I do the actual action scenes. I think the action in this is honestly a little underwhelming to me. I think that stuff on the plane at the end isn't too interesting for me. I think the whole first half, there's not like a scene or anything that really stands out to me thinking back on it. Like I have to go revisit it, but there aren't any standout moments aside from the Washington Monument scene and then the car scene with the dad. And I think that's my thing, is that I remember it more for the non-superhero stuff than the superhero stuff. And in a superhero movie ranking, I think the superhero stuff should be not maybe the most important, but as important as the character building. And like Chad said about how No Way Home elevated this for him, I think Morbius made this worse for me because of how they treated Vulture in that. And I think the use of Vulture in
big
that
time
really ruins some of this movie's like powerful stuff at the end, like setting him up to come back later and all that stuff, only to see what we've seen of him in Morbius. And I know Morbius isn't directly connected to the MCU, but this is the same character that's in Morbius, and I think that honestly tainted this a little bit for me too. But
dude,
yeah,
he
I like
comes
the
in
movie.
out of nowhere,
Right?
Freaking Morbius, dude, it's nuts.
I don't love this movie. I think it's the weakest for me of this phase, but I still like it. Like I think it's much stronger than the worst movies of phases 1 and 2. But for those reasons, it is lower than the rest for me.
And for the record, I haven't seen Morbius yet. So, Kerri, what do
I
you
didn't spoil
think?
much, but the trailers did have him in it. But I
No,
won't spoil
no.
how they use him. Yeah.
I was just saying that's why it hasn't. I haven't been recontextualized on Vulture.
Honestly, you don't need to. You probably shouldn't.
I might not. We'll see. Other than
wait till they release it the third time in theaters.
Other than maybe getting in on those sweet Morbin memes. So, Kerri,
Okay,
what do you have to say?
This was my number 5 as well. I think this is just a really fun movie. I love that we got a little bit of a different Spider-Man story. We're not quite getting the origin story. He's already been Spider-Man for a little bit. We don't have to go through him getting bit by the spider. I think, like James said, I'm kind of glad we don't go through the Uncle Ben storyline again this time. And I think, I don't know, I just love how this, and I love all these movies. The characters in this movie sets up the characters very well. I think Tom Holland as Peter Parker is really fantastic casting. I think he does a great job. I love the character of Ned. I love Marissa Tomei as Aunt May. I love I actually like the little Iron Man moments in this movie. But I think it has some really, really, really solid scenes, and I think overall the overall plot of the movie is really fantastic.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to do some more really quick thoughts. Yeah, the Iron Man stuff for me, I think, has grown on me over time, and then also we do get the origin story, we do get the Uncle Ben, but it's the entire trilogy is the origin story, which I think is really interesting instead of one movie. And that's, I think, why it lifts this one up for me a little bit more, because it's like, oh, that was just like the beginning, and it's just a very slow origin story over 3 movies instead of just one. So, yeah, that's another thing I wanted to add, because I thought that was brilliant when we get to the third one. We'll talk about that more in the next phase. But for now, what are we doing? Because I've kind of lost track.
James is going to tell us his number 5.
Number 5. James, what's your number 5?
My 5 was, hold on. It was Avengers Endgame.
Okay.
Yeah, number 5 is Avengers Endgame. Yeah.
Okay. Are we on to number 4s now?
Well,
are we going to talk about it since it's
that one's
top 5?
About Endgame, because that one's a little bit higher for me.
Yeah, but I think we're doing all of our top 5.
All right, fine. So we'll talk about Avengers.
I mean,
Endgame
maybe
now.
if it's in like our top 2 or 3, we can.
It's in my top
send it more.
3.
It's in my top 3 as well. Do we want to save it for a little later?
Yeah, let's just save it. Kerri, is it in your top 3?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. So what? So we're asking number 4s.
No, I think Dylan needs to give his number 5.
Yeah, it's actually a good segue from the last conversation, because now we're going to be talking about Far From Home, because that's my number 5. I know all of you had it lower. I think Kerri and James had it at 8. You had it at 10, Chad.
9.
I honestly think...
Or 10, right?
Yeah,
10.
I think this one has grown on me a lot more. I honestly think a lot of our personal opinions can be skewed by the times and places we watch this. I watched this movie on a field trip in Greece, and I said my one goal is I want to watch a movie in a Greek movie theater. And we found a movie theater. It was an outdoor movie theater, beautiful movie theater in Greece. First weekend of Spider-Man Far From Home. It was in English. There were Greek subtitles, but it was in English. And just being on a field trip in Europe and watching a movie about a field trip in Europe, it was just really cool to watch with my friends and be like, yo, that's us. And I think the actual story of them going to Europe and stuff in a field trip, it's a cooler inciting incident and just overall atmosphere and environment to me than just we're in school and it's homecoming. I think, yes, the Iron Man thing still looms over this one, but it's more of the Iron Man legacy and him still trying to prove himself now without Iron Man, rather than the other one, which was Iron Man's still here and he's telling me what to do. I like how it's this absence of Iron Man, and it's almost like an epilogue to Endgame in that sense, and then kind of going through Peter's trauma of what just happened in Endgame, losing Tony Stark. It almost feels to me like what Iron Man 3 was to the Avengers. This is the Iron Man 3 to Avengers Endgame for me. It's the character growth after that cataclysmic event, seeing Peter kind of struggle with it on his own, but also just being a fun movie. I think Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio is one of the best villains. For some reason, people don't bring it up enough in their top 5 MCU villains, because there are a lot of great villains, but I think he is one of the best, and I love his performance. And I think, honestly, visually, next to maybe Doctor Strange, I think this is my favorite overall visual film in terms of visual effects. I love that scene where Mysterio is kind of like making all those little like visual effects, and Peter almost feels like he's in a dream, trapped and running into walls and stuff like that and mirrors. And I think that sequence alone is probably the most stunning visuals I've seen in the MCU. So for that reason alone, I had to put it higher, and it settled at number 5 just because I go back to rewatch it more than I do the rest of my list. So I really like this movie.
Kerri, what do you? Great thoughts, Dylan. Kerri, what do you have to say about this one?
Yeah, this is a fantastic movie. I think it's a great follow-up to Spider-Man Homecoming. I love that we get to see more of MJ in this movie. Like Dylan said, I think Mysterio is a fantastic villain, and I love the setup. The setup. We have these really cool fights with Mysterio, and we're kind of like on his side up until he gets the glasses from Peter. And I love that reveal. It's so cool. I remember it was so exciting seeing it the first time because it was something we just hadn't seen in the Marvel universe before. Some kind of setup like that where we think someone, I don't know. It was really cool. I love how they show how the fights were staged. Even though some of the fights are staged, they look so like visually stunning. Yeah, this is a fantastic movie.
Yeah. So, all right, I'll go with my thoughts now. Yeah, I was really excited about this one because I'm a very vocal Jake Gyllenhaal like fan. Like I love him so much. And yeah, why would I put the film a little bit lower? I think it's just because like even though I still say that all the movies are strengthened because of the trilogy so fantastic, this one still just feels like a middle movie for me. And I feel like a lot of the times those are often weaker. Those just need to be like the connector. I'm like that with like the Empire Strikes Back, stuff like that, that I'm like, it's not, it's just the middle one. And I feel like, because of that, it's just a little bit lower. And I don't love the elemental stuff that went on. I didn't understand any of that. I didn't like any of that. I didn't think that was that great. But the villain stuff is really fantastic. I love Jake Gyllenhaal in that role. Kerri said it. I love the reveal, which is really funny and cool. And then I love what Dylan said about the kind of was like this, not Sandman, but the whatever the villain that Batman faces that does all the visual trickery and stuff like that, Scarecrow. And this is kind of like Spider-Man Scarecrow, where it messes with his head and you're not sure what the hell's going on. I think that's really great. I do think that MJ is a little better in this. She's out of her whole I'm trying to be this weird high school kid thing, and she's actually like a good like love interest or whatever with and it is fun to see them going on a trip. In general, I love the ending where he reveals Peter's identity to the world, and I love how that picks up in the next movie, which is really really cool. And I just think overall it's just less interesting as like a story for me than the first and the third installments, but I do think it's a really great movie. But maybe on like a third rewatch, it'll get better. It's just on a second rewatch, I was like, this one isn't as good as I thought it was going to be. But it could change. These are all great movies, or at least good movies. Yeah. I think that's all I wanted to say. So moving on to James. No. Did you talk about this? Yes.
I haven't talked about it yet. Yeah, I think the ending actually kind of like saved this movie, really. I liked the reveal of Mysterio. I liked how he did say, who Spider-Man is. I think that kind of angle really helped it at the last moment. Kind of going off like what you said, Dylan, with you being in Europe at the time while this movie was in theaters and you were able to see it. Like that's a very specific set of occurrences that happens to to put you in a situation like that where you kind of resonate with this movie more so like that. So me not having that experience, like I kind of ranked this a little bit lower for that reason alone. And in the beginning of this movie, because this one picks up after Endgame, right? And is this the one where everyone's coming back from the snap and he's in the school and everyone's in the gym, and like all like the band
Mhm.
members are snapping back to where they were before, and everyone's coming back into the world, and people are, you know, crashing with each other and tripping over each other, and everyone's like having a laugh. Like, if you think about it, if we've established now that post snap people come back to exactly where they were pre-snap at the point in time and point in their lives, think of people who like got snapped out of like an airplane. Like,
Oh my God.
you're re-snapping 35,000 feet in the air. Like, nah,
Yeah.
man, those people are dying again. People are falling
Yeah.
out of the sky. And then extrapolate that to whoever was driving a car or swimming, or, you know, if they're not ready for where they came back, like
Yeah.
those people, like they're kind of laughing this off. There's some kind of humorous sense, you know, scenarios in the school, but like
My
the
only hope is
reality
that
of it.
Wong got all the sorcerers that were still alive to like get some portals going. Like, yo, there are
Okay.
people
Yeah.
dropping, but who knows? I mean, they might have not thought that far ahead. Who knows?
Definitely, I don't
Yeah.
think they think that far ahead at all.
But it made me think of that because Chad mentioned when he shrinks the building in Ant-Man, like, yeah, the pipes shrink, there'd been water gushing out of, you know, concrete and all that kind of stuff, like which makes sense, like if you apply logic to places where you shouldn't really apply logic to because it's a freaking comic book movie. But the snap, yeah, if you come back exactly where you were before the snap, like, you know, airplanes, helicopters, anyone, you know, just think about it, you know, that kind of trivialized that, but my mind kind of went to there, like we're all coming back to where we were. You know, people aren't, there's not everyone's going to be having such a funny, hilarious re-entry into their lives. So that just kind of took it away from me a little bit too. I do my logic thing every once in a while, and it kind of
Yeah, this was James's, you know, post snap take. We had the gun take. So
yes, we did.
every episode will have some sort of James like this makes no sense, and he'll pull a Lewis Black on us and just rant at us for like a while. But we love it because it's hilarious. And I did want to add that Far From Home used to be my favorite of the John Watts before No Way Home. So I'm really gonna have to give that one a rewatch because I do think it's a lot better than I'm making it out to be. I do love a lot of parts of that movie. Moving on. What are we on to next? Everybody's fours, right? Who are we starting with?
James.
James, what's your four?
So 4, I had Thor Ragnarok.
All right. That's actually lower. I already said where it
Yeah.
was.
So unless it's in Kerri's like top 3 or whatever, we can.
It
or top
is,
2.
but I think we're at 4, so I think we're gonna have to start.
Okay. James, do you want to start with Thor Ragnarok?
Yeah, sure. So I have always been vocal about the Thor movies and how the comedic aspects of it don't always kind of land with me or resonate with me, but I had to kind of put some of that aside. This was one of the ones I rewatched because I really want to give it another kind of fair shake, and I do like how this movie progresses of the overall Thor story. I like how it incorporates the Hulk. You know, I think with how that character ended up, we might not really get a dedicated Hulk movie again with Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner. So I think we have to take him in as much as we can. And I really liked the Hulk angle of this movie, and I do like how they go about introducing him. I understand the funny bits. I do like Carl Urban. I think he was really, really good in this.
Justin Troy.
Yeah, yeah, specifically. But I think on the rewatch, this gave me a bit of a better impression on this movie as to just say, oh, well, they tried to be funny and it didn't work. Like, I think this one really does show itself as one of like maybe the better movies in this phase on the way they help Thor's overall adventure and how they bring in Hulk into this too. Again, but on the humor aspect, like right off the bat, he's talking to Surtur and he kind of unravels on the chain and he's like, you know, rotating around the chain. It's like, oh, hold on, let me turn around real quick. Like really right off the bat, come on, guys, not 3 minutes in the movie and we're already with this. So I had to kind of set that aside and really give the movie its fair shake. And I think it turned out better than it initially did when I first watched it.
And I love how movies sometimes evolve and just change in your head as you rewatch them. And honestly, I thought James was going to rank that one a lot lower because of a lot of things he was saying
I thought
before.
I was too, but to give it its fair shake, I think it was a good bit better
Yeah.
than some of the other offerings. So
And it's kind of the same thing. I thought Dylan was going to rank Captain Marvel a lot higher because I know how vocal he is normally, but I think it's because he wants to combat those trolls. Anyways.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, yeah, I'm very vocal on Captain Marvel, but there's still 8 better movies in it on this list. This was
Agreed.
my number 8, so like, I don't think this is still in my top tier. But again, like, I like James. I did kind of grow on this. I grew on this like him. I think the first time I saw it, I was really excited, mostly for the Hulk stuff because he is my favorite character. I liked the Hulk stuff. To me, though, it felt like 2 movies. There was the comedy, which was about Thor going to the Grandmaster Sakaar and, you know, like battling Hulk and them and all that, and Valkyrie. Then I felt like there was this other movie with Hela destroying Odin and the hammer and then just trying to destroy Asgard. And to me, the two didn't always blend. They blend more now that I've rewatched it a little bit more, but I still feel like they're so tonally at odds with one another that I still can't always get on board. Though I do think it is better than even some Phase 4 stuff we've seen where it has gone very tonalistically different. I think the balancing of tones here is a little bit more palatable because it tries its best to be a comedy 100% of the time, and even the darker stuff, it still feels like it has an impact, especially because it is followed by Infinity War in the timeline, not chronologically in release order, but you know, right after this is where Thanos, you know, basically wipes out most of those Asgardians on that ship. So, you know, I think that helps this one. Seeing what happens at the beginning of Infinity War helps this film for me, but I still feel like it's a little too funny when it needs to be more serious, and it's a little too serious when it was just very funny beforehand. I wish there was a little bit more of a balance. That being said, I think the comedy that is there on its own is very strong. I think Taika Waititi really is a fun voice to have in the MCU every now and then. And I think his character Korg is also very fun. Good introduction. But yeah, I think this is honestly the most fun I've seen with the Hulk in any of these movies, which I also like. And I think that's why it is slightly higher than I originally would have had it. So I do think the Hulk stuff redeems it the most for me.
Kerri, what do you have to say?
So this is my number 3. This is one of my favorite movies in all of the MCU. I understand the criticisms, and I don't think Hela is that fantastic of a villain, but I think the rest of the movie just it makes it not really matter to me. I love the comedy. For some reason, I thought that was just like a great change of pace. You know, something a little bit more similar to Guardians of the Galaxy in that way. And I thought it really paid off. I don't know. Until this movie, Thor was probably one of my least favorite Avengers. And then I saw this movie and he became one of my favorite Avengers.
Show them his shirt.
Oh yeah, I have my Thor shirt on. I don't know. I think Thor grows a decent bit in this movie, and I love that we get to see him like kind of at his full power with you know, just doing lightning everywhere. It's so cool. I love Jeff Goldblum in this movie. I love that we get some more Thor and Loki interaction, and on this time they're finally a little bit more on each other's side. You know, at least towards the end. I love Valkyrie. I think she is a fantastic addition to the MCU. I loved all of her scenes. I love that we get to see her character come from this really dark place and actually, you know, start healing and helping other people.
Great. Yeah, I love that Kerri loves this. I remember right after watching this with her, she was like, you know, Thor is like my favorite now. So yeah, yeah, it makes sense. If that can like take a character that you didn't love and make them your favorite, that's perfect. I want to piggyback off of, because I think Valkyrie's one of my least favorite characters. I just wanted to say that. I don't love Tessa Thompson. I don't, especially in this role, I don't get why. I think you could extract her and it would be fine. That being said, that's my hot take. But this movie I think is kind of a blast. I kind of want to rank it a little bit higher, but I already said my list is so far. Because when I think about it, I'm like, is it like a great story? I don't know, but it is just a really, really fun time. A lot of really funny stuff, and that may or may not work for you. I know a lot of the conversation about this is on the comedy because that's what Taika does. I mean, he did What We Do in the Shadows, stuff like that. That's what he does. It's just comedy. Um, it's not all he does, but if he does something, chances are it's going to be pretty hilarious, and you may or may not love that. I think the comedy works really, really well in this. Just even just the banter between Thor and Hulk when it's like, Hulk like fire, and it's like, well, I like fire too, and it's like, no, but I love raging fire, and just stuff like that. It's just like really great humor throughout. I love the beginning that James doesn't like. I thought that was really, really funny how it starts out that way. And then I also liked it was really cool the way they show the mechanics of the hammer, the way he like put it on the or not the hammer, but the Bifrost. And it like cut off the creature's head because the Bifrost transported the head, but not the rest of the body. So it's just like a lot of like really interesting, cool things like that. Kate Blanchett is interesting in the movie. Maybe not one of the best, but she's a really powerful. It's like Thor's the older brother, right? Well, sure, but he's also the younger brother, and he's maybe not the most powerful. And it's really cool to see him like rise above and kind of change. Like the long hair Thor was getting kind of old, and then short, like cool short hair Thor. It was really cool, and it has stakes because his eye and stuff like that. I love a lot of the things like the Hulk dropping when you thought he's like, let me show you what I'm gonna do, and then he jumps out and just smack right onto the bridge. A lot of this movie just makes me crack up just thinking about it, and Kerri's rolling her eyes, so I'm gonna go ahead and say, oh, I thought you were rolling your eyes.
I was just thinking
because I was talking on about the comedy in this movie. I think that's what really works for me. I do like Jeff Goldblum a lot in this, and I'm gonna do another comedy thing. I love the thing between Thor and Loki. You get a lot of really good stuff with that. With the
Get Help. Yeah.
Get Help. Thank you. I was like, what is the name of it? Get Help is like, I don't like Get Help. And
you're welcome, Chad. You just won a trivia match because of that. So you're welcome.
It's, like
it's gonna come up.
Thor loves Get Help because he's the one doing the throwing, not being thrown. So yeah, this is a really fun movie. I'm not sure. I have to rewatch Love and Thunder because I'm not sure if it works as well as it does in this one in that one. But I do love me a great Taika Waititi movie, and I think this is one of those. So moving on, we're on to who's number 4? Dylan's number 4.
I'm not sure if this is going to be higher. Kerri has already mentioned it. It is Avengers Infinity War. Oh, no, Chad has also mentioned it. Avengers Infinity War.
Lower
so,
for me,
James, I don't know how high it is for you, but are we talking about it now then? Or
James, where is Infinity War for you?
Oh, that's my top one.
Oh,
all
right.
That's higher for James. So we'll save it for just a few ticks. So, Kerri, what is your number 4?
Oh, man. My number 4 is Avengers Endgame.
And then I have that just a little bit higher
as well. Yeah.
So, all right. And my number 4, Guardians Volume 2.
That is also a little higher.
A little higher. All right. So now we're on to James's number 3 or number 4?
Dylan's number 3.
My number 3. This one has not been mentioned yet. This is, I believe, the only film that has not been mentioned yet. It is Black Panther is my number 3.
A little bit higher for me.
All right.
A little higher for me.
So I know where that is on chat.
Kerri, what is your number 3?
Thor Ragnarok, which we already talked about.
My number 3, Captain America Civil War.
That's my number 3.
Okay. And that was lower for Dylan. And
that was my 6 for me. Yeah.
Where's that for you? Okay, so it's higher. All right, so that was our 3s. So Dylan, what is your 2, right? Is that where we're at?
My 2, we can finally talk about it because everyone has talked about it. It is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is my number 2. I'll start off the conversation because I like it the most out of all of us. I think this is actually a really great segue from Ragnarok. Whereas I think the Ragnarok comedy, I agree with you, Chad, is so good. I don't know if it necessarily works with the drama in the movie. Whereas this one, I think the comedy is really good and works with the actual story being told. And like, this does have emotional stakes, it does have dramatic moments, but it feels like a comedy the whole way through. Whereas Ragnarok, some of those Hela bits, it's like, wait, aren't we doing a comedy? Like, who's this? What's going on, Hela? And here it's like, no, like everything still feels and lives and breathes Guardians. And I honestly think, Baby Groot is so fun, Rocket's great, but I think Drax is the real scene stealer here. Whereas the first movie, I like Drax. This movie is where I loved Drax. I think his comedy in this one is amped up to another degree. I know some of my friends disagree and think they make him almost a little too clownish. I disagree. I think his style of humor is so different than everyone else's, and it really works for me. And I love the stuff with Star-Lord and who he thinks is his dad, or his father versus his daddy. And I love that thread. I kind of teased it earlier when we were talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp, with the Michelle Pfeiffer stuff. I think this is similar, where it's like a lot about the parental connection and what that means, and that really strikes a chord with me. This is the only MCU movie I've ever cried at, so I think that's kind of also telling. I just become a blubbering mess at the end. I think it's the choice of soundtrack, father and son, but also just that moment with Yondu, a character who's memorable in the first one, but you don't expect to have such an impact. But then when he's gone, there is such an impact. And I think that's really telling of how good this movie is. That they can take a side character, fun sort of villain type from the first movie, make you totally invested in them in the second movie, and then by the time they die, actually like crying over them. Like, I think that's really masterful, and I think that's what James Gunn does super well here. This is a movie that just like hits me in all the feels, and I think it is the best blend of the drama and comedy of all the MCU in terms of like just juggling so many different tones. I think this does it so well, still being a comedy at heart, but also exploring different paths and just going in different directions. And the soundtrack, like I said, is just so good. So I love this movie. I love this movie.
Kerri, what do you have to say?
Yeah, this is an amazing movie. It's a great follow-up to the original Guardians of the Galaxy. I think I put this a little lower because I actually don't think it was for me, it was not as good as the first one. And I don't know. I think something about Ego as a villain, I don't know. I didn't connect with it as much as some of the other films, but overall, it's really fantastic. I think, like Dylan said, James Gunn has a way of just making you laugh and then also cry. You're laughing a lot and you're crying a lot in his movies, and it's surprising. And meanwhile, there's like fantastic action. There's fantastic music. I wish we had maybe gotten a little bit more from like Gamora in this movie. I feel like her character kind of grew a lot in the first movie. We didn't get as much growth in this one from her. But yeah, overall, just a beautiful movie.
Is this the one with Gamora and her sister fighting?
Yeah.
Well, this is where Nebula finally becomes a Guardian as well, which is something I didn't even talk about, but I love that aspect too of that sisterhood.
Yeah. I really love that part. I had this number 4. I agree with Dylan. I don't think I like it as much as he does, but close. Because I think this one is really fantastic. I think the first one is the more like solid of a movie. Like, I love all the comedy stuff, especially with Drax, like Dylan was saying, but I also think they kind of like sideline him a little. He doesn't have that much to actually do in the movie. And so, for that, because they kind of focus so much on the father-son thing, some of the other characters do get not as much to do. You get Rocket and Baby Groot in the ship with the other guys, and the whole stuff with him going to find that headpiece, and he brings the toe, and they're like, we're just not going to talk about this. There's just a lot of really great stuff in the movie. Dylan hit it right on the head there, right on the nose, that this is one of the best endings in any MCU film, and it always gets me as well, because Cat Stevens' Father and Son is just one of the greatest songs ever. It will always, just alone, that song is enough to hit you in the feels, but coupled with what they do with Yondu's character, everything Dylan said with that, with the, you're like Mary Poppins. Is he cool? Hell yeah, he's cool. I'm Mary Poppins, y'all. Stuff like that. And then just the physically seeing him sacrifice himself for Peter. And then Peter like going, no, and like wanting to, be the Star-Lord that would actually like he does in the original Guardians, try to sacrifice himself for Gamora. He would do that for Yondu, and yet he can't. And so he's just sitting there watching this guy that he's now said, thought like, he's just said, I may not have been your what is that? I may not have been your father, but
he may have been your
he
father,
wasn't your
but he
daddy,
wasn't your daddy.
right.
Yeah.
So basically he's saying like, maybe he was, or he had more of an influence in his life and he wasn't blood. And I think that's a powerful message. And just that whole moment and the scene after, and the Ravagers finally respecting Yondu and giving him a Ravager funeral. So beautiful. Just the visuals, the soundtrack, everything with it. If that's not enough to get you in the feels, you may not have any feels. So I do think the strength of that ending makes this one go up for me, but I do agree with Kerri. I do think the Kurt Russell, although it's always a joy to see him, is maybe not the best. You kind of see the villain thing maybe coming in further rewatches and stuff like that, but the fights are cool. I love the needle drops that Dylan was talking about, like the chain from Fleetwood Mac and everything. A lot of really great stuff, a lot of great comedy. I love Rocket in the movie too. But I've talked enough. James, Guardians 2.
Yeah, I had this one a little bit lower, and I think again it might actually be due to just how much comedic stuff they put in here and how like kind of quick it comes at you. Like I think I got it with the first Guardians of the Galaxy a little more than this one. So that's why this one might rank a little bit lower. I think I do like the moments where Nebula and Gamora were fighting, because at the end she's like, I just Nebula's like I just wanted a sister, like, and that kind of like puts a stop to everything. Like, I was even like watching the movie like, oh, like should we like be turn away for a minute? And then like having a moment, like it seems like like super personal. Like, should we be watching this? You have to like sort through this real quick, but like that was a really big moment. I think for me that really kind of hammered in like the kind of drama that they're able to put into this, like aside from all the comedy too. I think I liked the part at the end, of course, with the Ravager funeral. That kind of got to me too a little bit. I will admit that kind of got me welling up maybe a little bit. I was like, oh, like I wouldn't really expect this to come at the end like this, but I thought that was done really, really well too. I think maybe one of my favorite lines in it was when Ego's kind of breaking down and he's getting into his like planet form, and he's just some like kind of like glowy like skeleton thing, and Quill looks at him, he's like, of course I've got issues, that's my father. Like I kind of like that line in the movie, maybe the most, but I think this one just kind of lays on the comedy a little too much for me. I know I never really got it that well with the Thor movies either. I think James Gunn does a better job with it, but I think this one was just kind of oversaturation of funny stuff, and that's maybe why I put this one a little bit lower overall in this phase.
For sure. And also I wanted to add, I don't really love the gold people in the movie. I'm hoping Guardians 3 strengthens
The
that
Sovereign.
part.
Yeah.
So anyways, number 3s, right? Is that where we're at, or 2s?
We just finished. That was my number 2. So now we're going on to, I don't know who's number 2, but
Kerri, what is your number 2?
Okay, my number 2 is Black Panther.
Okay, my number 2 is Avengers Endgame.
Mine is Black Panther.
Okay.
Yep.
So
I guess we could talk about either of them or both of them. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about Avengers Endgame because someone had that lower.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that was my 5.
Avengers Endgame. Anyone was? I guess I can start. All right, Avengers Endgame. This movie, I almost ranked this number 1, and then I changed my mind at the last second because there's one I think I like a little bit more. Avengers Endgame is the culmination of like everything before, before Phase 4, before the movie came out, and I thought that they handled everything pretty spectacularly. All the stuff. I love to see the advancement of Hulk. Doesn't really make much sense to me, but yeah, he's advanced now and he's able to talk normally now, which was kind of cool. I loved the portal sequence at the end with everyone coming in. I think that was pretty great. I loved the cold open that happens with Hawkeye at the beginning, and then just seeing everybody kind of like, vanish there was really, really cool. And I don't know. I mean, like everything just really comes together in this movie. They try, do they try and fail to kill him again or something like that? And they're trying to do. It's weird. They do like the whole time sequence where they go and all go in. They go into their white uniforms and go back in time and try to get all the stones again so that they can actually try to snap this out. I love that, Iron Man Tony Stark doesn't want to, help at first because he's finally found like some sort of like happiness and peace. Yet, we all know that things aren't right with the universe. I love Fat Thor. I think that was really funny and cool and unexpected. And I think this has, and Dylan might get into this, I think this has one of my favorite moments with the stuff between Thor and his mother Frigga, because that really got to me, because I didn't really care about his relationship with his mother until we got here. And like it really got to me when she's like, things haven't been going well for you and stuff like that. It just, that part really got to me. So you have a lot of really emotional scenes, a lot of comedy, like the Build-A-Bear jokes and stuff like that. I think everything really, really works and comes together and comes to a satisfying close. They could have ended everything there. They chose not to and chose to keep going. But that's a satisfying, like the saga in general, those 23 or 6 or whatever movies it was. And I love the closing, the final arc of Tony Stark getting to snap and end. I thought that was like one of the darkest moments, just seeing Tony literally dying, snapping, saying, "I am Iron Man." It finished how it started, and then he got to go out saving the world and bringing people back and making things as it should be. And and it's really emotional. But when Pepper is like, you can go and
You
stuff
can
like
rest
that.
now.
That's,
Yeah.
dude, that's like so intense. Just seeing a character die like that, and it's got so much in it. It's a very long movie. Well, it's not very long, but it's longer, and yet I feel like it's so watchable. But other people will bring up some really great stuff, I'm sure. So I will go ahead and let James talk now.
All right. So this was number 5 for me. Yeah. So I mean, I do obviously appreciate all of like the sentimental moments in this movie. I do appreciate that it kind of wraps everything up. I liked, everyone returning in the portals and whatnot. All that was definitely really good. It was awesome to see Captain America get to fight with Mjolnir. Um, I would say like my kind of gripes with it are more like maybe like smaller issues, like you said, Chad, when they open with Hawkeye, losing his family. Like, yeah, you like every normal person would like grieve from that and have to go through like a healing process. But I think it was a little odd to see him in Japan killing the Yakuza. Like
That was weird.
to,
Yeah.
to me, that's a bit of a reach, and that's a lot of. I mean, he's definitely skilled with bows and arrows, but to like fight with melee weapons and swords and things like that, like I don't quite understand how that was the outcome or how he directs his rage or his grief upon the world. So that was a little bit interesting to me to see them do that. I think at the end also, and this might be more like continuity Marvel things, but when Captain America goes back to put the stones back, aren't there 2 Captain Americas again? Because if he goes back into the previous spot in the timeline. Aren't there still two at that point when he puts all the stones back?
My head hurts.
Aren't there still
Yeah,
two?
that's a good question. Yeah, because he would be because he decides to live his life out from the 40s, but then I guess
Correct.
there would still be one trapped in ice that whole time.
At that time.
Yeah, and then
So
yeah.
they brush past that, and then I guess the super soldier serum isn't permanent because he is able to age once he goes back into time. But the impression we get is that the serum is permanent, I guess, from the progression of films that we see with him with the super soldier serum. I guess I was under the impression it could not just kind of wear off or wear off with age. So when he becomes old Captain America, I was kind of like, oh, so this is not a permanent thing. And I don't know if it was just done to kind of usher Chris Evans out of the movies, or if this, I don't know how that decision was made. I don't really know, honestly, the comic books that well. Given how many there are, I would imagine it kind of maintains its strength within him the whole time. So it was interesting to see old Captain America kind of just like that. He just kind of ages out of the super soldier serum. Those two things kind of stood out to me. There's probably some other things I'm missing, but this one just wasn't quite as high on the list for me. Just for those kind of reasons, I think.
Yeah, Dylan, what do you have to say?
Yeah, I actually that's a good point, James, because I think I used to give this like this is like 5-star film. It's great. It's an amazing ending, and I think the two things that have detracted that from me is the one thing Chad mentioned, the fact that it was not the ending, and I think if this had been the definitive ending of the MCU, it would have played much stronger. But now that we've gotten more since, it's like as they get bigger, when are the end games going to start to feel smaller? Like I couldn't imagine anything being bigger than Endgame, and now we're getting Secret Wars, and it's like, oh, okay, great. So like now is Endgame going to feel as small as Avengers does to Avengers Endgame? I don't know. And the other being that time travel just creates so many plot holes and story holes and all that stuff in general. So like those are things you have to wrap your head around. But at the same time, I'm the one who ranked the highest of everyone. I put it at number 1 because I think it is the most thematically and story satisfying to me. And I think it's because it has everything in it, but it doesn't feel like it's all crammed in there. It feels like everything is given its time to breathe, its moment to shine. Every character has something to do. Every character has their own arc. Everyone feels vital to the puzzle. Whereas we'll talk about with one other movie, I feel like maybe it's more about one central figure, whereas here I feel like it's about every single piece of the puzzle, every single player in the group. And I think that's why this one resonated so much for me. And because it does have a really strong 3-act structure. The first act is dealing with the snap and then defeating Thanos and realizing that didn't work. And now they just have to live with the fact that everyone's gone for all that time, and then creating the time heist. The second act, the whole second hour being the time heist itself. Then the third act being dealing with Natasha's death into the final battle with the portals, and then Iron Man's death. Like it's a perfect 3-act structure, and I really like that. It has a good structure. This could have gone all over the place, but I feel like it really has a very well thought out series of events. Like it really feels like everyone sat down and was like, okay, here's the step-by-step process. And I can't believe they pulled it off. And I think that's why I'm so impressed with it, is that it is such a huge, daunting task, and they pulled it off and managed to get some good feels in there and good comedy. And everyone, like I said, got the chance to shine. Of course, the people who were snapped away didn't have as much time to shine, but as a swan song for Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans and other people in this universe, like this was a great movie for them to shine. And then the characters that we all lost in the last one still get to come back at the end, and each of them still get a moment, to kind of remind us why we love this group and this ensemble. And I think that's what's so special about this movie, and why I do revisit it. I do think its flaws are apparent, but I do think it is very, very solid. And if I'm going to rewatch any of these, it is long, but I'd love to just put on any minute of this and I can watch any minute and be entertained. And it has the parent stuff. Like Chad said, the Frigga stuff, it's really emotional, especially because not many people revisit or remember Thor the Dark World. So it's a nice reminder of what Thor's been fighting for, and the fact that he lost the rest of his family in Ragnarok and Infinity War and he has no one. I think that's a big aspect. And then the stuff with Tony also being a parent, finally sacrificing that for the greater good, and then getting to talk to his dad back in time. And when he meets him, it's just like, oh, like this face to face, because he never really got that in so long, and that really beautiful moment with his dad. Like just those little moments are just so satisfying. It's fan service, but it's fan service done well, and I really commend just the fact that they pulled it off in general to be such a huge feat. So that's why it's my number one, because I think it just pulled off seemingly the impossible, and it did a really good job.
Yeah, and just to add, the thing you said about like later installments kind of detracting from this one, I think that's exactly what the Falcon and the Winter Soldier show did a little bit, where it's like, he bequeathed the shield onto Sam, and Sam's like, I don't want it. And it's like, why isn't Cap's word good for you, bro? But no,
Well,
I love that scene for with Cap ending it, and I just wanted to throw that out there. And I think Black Widow's death kind of pissed some people off because she deserved a lot better. But Kerri, what do you think about Avengers Endgame?
Yeah, I don't have a ton more to add. This was a really amazing movie. I have actually liked it better going back on rewatches, especially like I've done like a whole big MCU rewatch, and just seeing the entire the first three phases as a whole. And this, I mean, I know we get Far From Home after this, but seeing this as kind of the cap off to the first three phases, it is really, really excellent. We get a moment at least with everyone, but mostly with our original core Avengers, that they're really the focus in this movie. And rightfully so. This is kind of our goodbye to a lot of them. I think the emotional moments with Tony Stark just really pay off. And if you watch the whole first three phases together, you see like Tony has this incredible growth from like going to like this very selfish guy to sacrificing himself for the entire world. And yeah, and this movie still has its funny moments. We still get when Scott gets his whole taco blown out the helicopter. I do wish we could have. I love that we eventually got a Black Widow movie. I do wish it's kind of like Black Widow dies towards the middle of the movie. We don't, and then the last part of the movie is the big Tony Stark send off. I don't feel like we get, as to live as much with the Black Widow.
And we don't even get a funeral for her, but we get one for Iron Man.
Yeah.
Sexism.
But I think it's also really clever how they wind up pulling off getting everyone back. And I just remember being in the theater and being so shocked when the 5 years later comes up, and you're like, what? So I thought we were getting everyone back. Are we not getting everyone back? Are they going to go back in time? Like, what's going on? I just remember that as a cinematic experience. It was really fun.
And the Cap wielding Mjolnir and the Avengers Assemble, some of the greatest moments ever too.
Great theater experience, yeah.
Absolutely. So moving on, where are we at? We're all over the place.
I think
There's
now
three
we're
we
on
haven't
our
talked
number.
about.
We just have to reveal the other three number ones, because my number one, which I just talked about, was Avengers Endgame, and that was your number two, Chad. So now we just have yours, Kerri's, and James's number ones left.
Kerri, what's your number one?
All right, my number one is Captain America: Civil War.
My number one is Black Panther.
Mine is Infinity War.
Okay. So I think, because I rated Infinity War pretty low, maybe we should talk about that one now.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, you rated that at 7, I believe, and
Yeah.
Kerri had that at 6. And I had that at 4.
All right. So James had it highest. James, you start.
Yeah. I just like, again, this is more of like a build-up versus like a rival type thing, like the journey versus a destination. And I think this one just does the build-up so well. I like how it comes off, because it comes off the heels of Civil War. Starts off with, Tony Stark not really being able to call Captain America. And I think I like how it kind of starts off kind of scattered and kind of brings itself together in the end. I think I liked a lot how they were able to kind of give you that introductory kind of view into how they all fight together. I liked how, I mean, the humor was good in it too. It wasn't too spread out. It wasn't too condensed like it is in the other movies. So I can appreciate that also. I think I liked how you see Spider-Man kind of, jump into the fight, and he, you can't have a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man if there's no neighborhood kind of thing. I appreciate all of that. I appreciate that bit of the movie. I think I appreciate how they elaborate on Vision. I think I liked him a lot, and Wanda also. I think as far as like their kind of connection goes, I like how it touched up on that more. I just like this. I, I wouldn't say I rewatched this one a lot, but this is probably my favorite of the Phase 3 movies.
Nice. Dylan, what do you have to say about that one?
Yeah, I was the next highest with this at number 4. I think one of the things I really liked about it was how many characters were in it the first time I saw it, but it does feel sometimes like the structure's not there, in the sense that like you'll have a good 30 minutes go by and then you'll come back around to the Doctor Strange Iron Man stuff and be like, oh yeah, that's right, we're still with them and Squidward in space.
Yeah.
And then like the next scene is Wanda and Vision. You're like, oh wait, we haven't seen them yet. It's been like 15 minutes. And I think that's where Endgame is stronger to me. Is Endgame, I think, has a better structure, in the sense that it feels like it's still following the same story and it has a coherency that I feel like Infinity War is a little scattershot. That being said, if you look at it from Thanos' perspective, I think it's a much stronger movie. I think it's a good Thanos movie. I think he is not the protagonist, but he's the main character of the film. It is his journey to get every stone and accomplish his goal. He's the one who has the motive. He's the one who has the end result, and he achieves his goal. And I think that's something that's bold, is to have a movie that is a villain's story and a villain's way of going about what he wants, and having your heroes kind of be the things in the way of the villain getting to what the villain gets at the conclusion. I think that's a really interesting way to look at it, and it makes a better movie for me if you look at it from Thanos' perspective. Because as an Avengers perspective, it's like I said, it's a little scattershot. There are some scenes where it's been 20 minutes between bits, and it's like, where were these guys? Where were these guys? It's a lot of keeping up with different people in different places, which feels a little all over the place. But like James said, it does come together at the end. This is actually my favorite Thor movie too. I think it is does much more for Thor's character for me than any of the other 4 Thor movies, because it starts with him losing his brother and his best friend. It's him kind of going to rock bottom, being the last one left on that ship alive, and then stumbling upon the Guardians and leading the Guardians to get this new axe, and stretching out the power of the star. And I just think it's a really good arc for Thor, to then culminate in him being the one who gets the final blow on Thanos. And of course it doesn't work out the way he wants it to, but like that to me is a really compelling arc, is Thor's story in this whole thing. Still getting to have some quips with the Guardians, but making it more about his dramatic arc than his comedic one, which I really like. So I like this movie a lot. I think it's a solid number 4 for me, but I do think some of its issues, I think Endgame does better. But I still really like this movie.
Kerri, what do you have to say?
Yeah, I really like this movie as well. I kind of go back and forth with it on rewatches, how much I like it. I think it can be we're following a lot of storylines. We're following a lot of different groups of characters. And it like you guys have said, it does come together eventually in the end. And I think it is Endgame. We're able to actually, I think, focus a little bit more on fewer people because of the snap. Infinity War is a little lower for me because we have everyone in this movie, and everyone does need to get their time. And it's so hard to actually fit that in and have it cohesive. It's interesting what Dylan has been saying about Thor in the beginning of this movie. I actually don't like the beginning of this movie because it does for me what Alien 3 does, where Aliens is like everyone is saved at the end, and then Alien 3 it starts off and everyone's dead in the spaceship. And in this movie,
so stupid.
Thor is so successful in Ragnarok, it's saving all the Asgardians that are left. There's not even that many of them left anymore.
That's a great point.
And then
that is a good point. Yeah,
it helps because I thought when I first watched this movie, I'm still not convinced this isn't what they were initially trying to do, was that all of the Asgardians except for Thor died on the ship when Thanos came. Apparently that's not accurate because we see later, there's another Thor movie with Asgardians, but it's that he still kills a good portion of them. Again, I guess he kills 50%. That's what he does, and I just wasn't paying attention the first time I watched it. But I don't love that because it's like you're literally just coming off of Ragnarok, and he's so successful in Ragnarok, and then he gets immediately just like thrown down again. But overall, we get some really great character moments in this movie, and it is such a great setup for Endgame.
Yeah, and Kerri made a great point about that. I do think that does take away a little bit of Ragnarok, a little bit. Yeah, so that actually, and the other kind of negative that I have about this movie, because there's not a lot of negatives, is that there's I believe, a fully CGI henchman character that I don't.
4 of them, yeah, 4.
I don't understand. No, no, that one looks pretty good. There's another henchman. It's like a girl character, a woman character.
Oh, Proxima Midnight. Yeah.
Always
with the horns on her.
Kerri Coon's character.
That's an actual actress because the whole time I'm like, that's a
girl.
CGI person.
Well, yeah, she's voice actress. Yes. I thought you were asking if Kerri Coon was a real person. I was like, yeah, Gone Girl.
No, I know who Kerri Coon is. I've seen the leftovers and stuff.
Yeah, but her voice actress. Yeah.
I don't understand why they couldn't just have an actor in that role. I don't. That just throws me off sometimes. Like, why is this here? I can tell this movie is fake now. But that being said, this movie does have a lot of strong stuff. They talked about the Thor getting with Groot and Rocket and stuff is a really cool dynamic. Even teenage Groot having a little bit of arc, like throwing down his damn video game to, help out. The battle on at Wakanda is kind of better than this battle stuff in Black Panther, I think, maybe a little bit. There's just a lot of really great stuff. And I do like the ending of the movie where the snap happens, everybody starts dissolving. It's very emotional. And then it has that kind of like somber close. And it's like it's going to continue. But, it left off where, our villains fail. It's kind of like the Empire Strikes Back type of ending or whatever. The Empire Strikes Back of the whatever. But like I've said, it's not my favorite of the Star Wars. This isn't my favorite of the Avengers. That would definitely be Endgame since I ranked that number 2. And I didn't want to just like front load my top 5 with just a bunch of Avengers films. I'm like, there's a lot of great singular films in here. I was like, I want one Avengers films in my top 5. And so I threw this one at like 6 or 7. I thought was a pretty decent place for it. That's why I ranked it there, but I do think it's really great. I love the Spider-Man stuff. He does bring up aliens, doesn't he? In the movie? Yeah, he brings up aliens.
Oh, yeah, he does.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot of great stuff. I also find kind of annoying all of the Bruce Banner stuff is kind of annoying because him whole fighting with the Hulk. I'm like, why don't you just have the Hulk instead of him going like, I guess I got to do this myself because the Hulk won't come out. All that stuff is very annoying.
It's trauma. It's the Hulk showing that he is not invincible and that he has like this fear of Thanos, that he's like scared to come out almost. Yeah. I don't know. It's a joke that gets beat too much though. I do agree.
Okay.
They go on too much about it.
To me, I mean, yeah, maybe if they would have started the movie out with that and then he becomes the Hulk later, but I don't even think he becomes the Hulk later, right?
Yeah, he's only the Hulk in the beginning, and he gets so badly beat up by Thanos that he's too scared to come out later. Yeah,
that's right. Okay. Yeah. Well, anyways, yeah, it's definitely a great movie. A lot of stakes, and then I think maybe it's a little bit of a detractor because people are talking about the comics and they're like, oh, we probably know what's going to happen, and that's why there shouldn't be comics. We should just get rid of comics and just make these movies just in general because I'm tired of the comics people coming out and saying, I already know what's going to happen. This is a story I read back in issue 52.
Just ignore the comics, people.
Anyways, moving on. Great movie. Moving on. I think we're on to Captain America Civil War. Is that the next lowest or?
Yeah. I had that at 6. So yeah, I
Yeah.
believe so. But you and James had it at 3, and Kerri, that was her number 1.
Yeah,
we're
Kerri.
kind of all out of.
Do you want to
sorts here,
start
but
with Captain
yeah,
America Civil
I'll
War?
start because this is my favorite. This movie is amazing. I love it. I think it's a really great follow-up Captain America movie, and I know it is more of an Avengers movie almost than a Captain America movie. I don't know. There's just something about I love the storyline between Steve and Bucky and Tony Stark, and kind of the reveal that Bucky is the person who killed Tony's parents, and how, Steve and Tony are almost at a point where they're ready to forgive each other, and then that bombshell is kind of dropped. I think this is like the movie with some of the best action sequences, I think. Just the motorcycle chase. We get to see Steve and Tony just coming to blows with each other, like no holds bar. I love that Steve chooses Bucky, and he chooses kind of independence from, this like government sponsored superhero type agreement. I love that he, chooses that route instead of going ahead and signing along with the Accords. I don't know what else to say about this movie. I just really enjoy it. I'm a sucker for a Captain America movie.
Same. Yeah, no, Kerri said a lot of really great things there that I agree with. I think I rank Captain America: The Winter Soldier top because it has probably the best action in all of the MCU, and this one is no different. This one, the Rousseau brothers just come out and they know how to direct some Chad Stahelski-esque great fight sequences, and then we get this on the stairs with Bucky and Cap. Also while they're arguing and stuff, and then they just still are fighting oncoming people, and then Black Panther shows up and he's doing his thing, and then they're all fighting, and it's kind of ridiculous because how the hell do they all run so fast? Apparently, I guess because they're all supers now. In the highway thing, just running double the speed of cars, which is pretty insane. But it is great because you get that Bucky turn around to the motorcycle. Just the way they film all of that is fantastic and just so fun to watch. And that's why people say maybe some of the story, the Zemo stuff, maybe isn't the best. I think it's pretty good because he has a really great motivation. I'd be pissed off too if my family died because of carelessness and stuff like that. And then he's just continuously listening to the voicemails and stuff. We get that in a lot of movies and shows where it's someone's still listening to the voicemails of a loved one that they can no longer see because that's all they have left. They just want to hear and see things about them. That's really great. I do love the Cap Iron Man stuff. Throughout the whole movie, I want to punch you in your pretty teeth or whatever line. You see that there's a respect there, but a fundamental disagreement. You can see why Iron Man feels the way he does, because he's so guilt-ridden, but Cap has these unwavering morals that he'll never sacrifice. I think he would if he found a good reason to, but he goes, no, we can't give up our agency to a government authority. Those people don't know what the hell they're doing. They're not going to let you just choose. They're going to choose for you what you go and do. So I love the political kind of squabbling between them, and people are standing their ground. And it had are you Team Cap or Team Iron Man? Team Cap all the way because it's the best way to be. Sorry if you disagree. But yeah, I love all the action. I love the Tony, Bucky, Cap fight at the end where they're all fighting together, and it's he's my friend, and it's so was I, stuff like that. Just so much drama, and all this stuff is great. The fucking airplane or airport scene is just so great. It does kind of turn into an Avengers movie at one point, but I don't think that's that big of an issue. They had some stuff that they needed to throw in there. A lot of that stuff is really great. Getting to see Ant-Man grow really, really huge, and to see what sides everybody takes is really interesting. it's just a really great, fun movie, and it's why I ranked it number 3 because I just think this one is such a great watch. I enjoy watching this. I think more than the actual Avengers movie sometimes. So, um, James, what do you think about Captain America: Civil War?
I think you guys really summed it up pretty well. I like all the action in it. I like all the conflicts. I like all the inner turmoil. I like how they dropped the bomb of it was Bucky who killed Tony's parents at that last moment, right when they're kind of all coming together to fight Zemo. You know, his whole point of, well, we obviously can't destroy these people from the outside, so let's try and tear them apart from the inside. We'll let them, rip themselves apart. Was really interesting. I like that. I like that whole angle. They got the politics. That was still pretty interesting. They did that really, really well with Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and I think they did pretty much as good a job in this one. Overall, it's a really solid movie. I think I just enjoyed some other movies a little more. That's all.
No worries. And Dylan, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I put this at 6. I honestly think this movie, I've always judged it because it's called Captain America Civil War, and I wish it was maybe Avengers Civil War, or just called Civil War, or Cap versus Iron Man Civil War, because I feel like Iron Man is such a big part of it that, like, to call it a Captain America movie, like, I guess it's a Captain America movie. There are other scenes where, like the funeral and all that stuff and the Sharon Carter stuff, but at its core, it's an Avengers movie. It's, to me at least, like it doesn't feel like a Cap movie, and to me that kind of brings it down a little bit. Especially because I think Bucky has a bigger part in the whole fight than Cap even does. Like I think it's really mostly Bucky and Tony at the most climactic parts of the movie. I think the action's really great though. Like that the airport, and then the final battle with the three of them is just so good. And I like how this is a very climactic point in this phase if we're looking at the whole overall narrative, seeing how everything changed after this and how it created a conflict for then to get resolved in Endgame, and have so much time pass between that to like resolve the conflict, and see how it even doesn't get resolved till maybe like an hour into Endgame even. So I like the long-standing consequences this movie has in the overall phase. On its own, though, I do think it works better with the phase than it does on its own for me, just because I don't really know why. I just think I go back to other movies first. I think it's kind of that thing of when a bigger movie comes out, the ones before it get a little bit smaller. It's kind of why I don't go back to the original, The Avengers, as much, is because Endgame is just so big that like even this movie feels small in comparison. And I think that's just a fault with just how big they've gotten, and that's not necessarily a fault, just more so an observation. But I do really like this movie though. It's hard to rank these top few movies, but this is definitely one of my favorites.
Oh, awesome. Okay. So now there's only one movie I think we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah.
Yep, you're number one.
I ranked it number 1, so I'll go ahead
Start.
and talk about this one. I did have Endgame number 1. I swapped it at the last second because just like thinking about it, I had trouble coming up with a lot of like things to say about Endgame a little bit because there is so much in it. Maybe sometimes it's almost too big. There's so much going on that it's great to focus on a single story sometimes. And I think Black Panther is one of the best ones you can get. The only negative of this movie, I think, is some of the action isn't as good as it could have been. It gets a little weird in CGI at times towards the end, especially with the Wakanda fight towards the end and the train battle. But that's the only negative that I can think about. Everything else, it's just a fantastic movie. It's the only one that was nominated for Best Picture. And a lot of people criticize it and criticize the Academy for that. I think it was a great choice because this was such a cultural shift of a movie. It gave so much to so many people, basically, serving an underserved community, and actually like reframing things to people who have been like, significantly like oppressed as a culture, and then seeing a movie that props up an entire culture to be like rulers and leaders of an entire civilization that's actually kind of ahead of the game of a lot of different places. And it's like, you guys, the whole question of what is your duty when you have like this natural resource that is like apparently the best resource ever, to in medical advancements and all this science technology and everything, what is your duty to the rest of the world when you have, like how Killmonger kind of twists it, and he's like, well, you have a duty to the people who look like you around the world to help prop them up because they're being pushed down. And it's such an interesting kind of take. And then you see the flaws with T'Chaka and how he did things in the beginning that kind of made him more of a gray area character and made T'Challa angry at him. This movie's beautiful. A lot of just really beautiful sequences that reminded me kind of like The Lion King when you go to like
Mm-hmm.
the afterworld type of thing where people go where they die.
The
and
ancestral plane, yeah.
The ancestral plane, they turn into panthers, and that's just all so beautiful. Just all of the colors in this movie, the sequences where they're doing the thing, and they're having the fights, which are really epic, especially when you have the one with Killmonger, and you get to see just how many people he's killed apparently because he has all those bumps on him. The other weak thing, I don't love Claw in the movie. I think Claw sometimes has some very, very cringe humor. I made it rain, and I'm like, oh, dude, can we not have Claw in this movie? I don't like him in the movie. I think other people do really like him in the movie, but
I do.
I'm like, no, like Andy Serkis is better in other things. Let him go do other things. But that's the only other detractor. Other than that, I think this movie is near perfect. Just the story from a storytelling perspective. I'm so sad. Obviously that Chadwick passed away. Great name by the way. But the way he his arc in this movie as T'Challa is just so great of figuring out how to be like a true king and learning from the villain. Like the villain actually teaches him something that he should open up to helping other people and not just keeping everything for themselves, but just helping the world. And he kind of joins the United Nations and tries to be like a leader and develops outreach programs and stuff like that. And I just think it's such a fantastic way of doing that. As a film, Kendrick Lamar doing like soundtrack stuff is fantastic. Fantastic score.
Oscar winning score. Yeah.
Yes. And it's just, I don't know. I just want to keep talking about this movie, but I know I shouldn't. So let me see if there's any other little things that I wanted to add. No, it's just fantastic. The Killmonger death is just, so poignant, and just the way, like, he's like, he just chooses not to. We could save you, and he's like, what's the point? And then I kind of hope he comes back in Wakanda forever, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Michael B. Jordan is. I don't know if they're gonna make him come back as him or as the previous version or a flashback. I have no idea, but yeah.
I'm excited. All right, James, what do you have to say about Black Panther?
I think you summed up a lot of the positives of the movie really, really well. I really appreciated it when I saw it the first time. When, like you said, you kind of almost like agree with Killmonger for a minute, and when T'Challa goes back and he's like, "Yeah, well, like, why did you leave this boy behind? Like, that's not how we should do things." Like, it makes you almost sympathize for a minute with the villain, like you kind of understand where he's coming from, at least to some degree. I really like when movies do that. I think I definitely agree when you said it kind of, it kind of props up that culture. It puts things into perspective. It really, puts them in the spotlight. It hopefully, gives people a new appreciation for that. But I think it did a really good job. There was just one real quick line, which kind of like grounds all of that in reality too, when he's speaking with, I forget the character played by Daniel Kaluuya, when they're talking about, should they open their borders, should they not? And he's like, well, when you bring, you let immigrants come into this country, they bring their problems too. It's like, do we really want that? And that kind of, especially in this day and age, with the states, a lot of people cry, immigration, kick them all out, that kind of thing. Like, it's not uniquely an American train of thought. So I appreciate how the movie just briefly touches up on that. It doesn't kind of lift it up too high. I kind of like that too. I think it got the political aspect of things really, really well. I don't like how the MCU did Claw. I think they did him kind of a really big disservice, and especially to have someone like Andy Serkis up on the screen not portraying some form of primate or, you know,
Oh.
be it Caesar from
Yeah.
the Planet of the Apes, or I know he did the Peter Jackson's King Kong,
Gollum. Oh, and yeah, King Kong.
but Gollum too, yeah, for sure. Like, it's nice to see
Oh,
Andy
he did
Serkis like
another one. I don't
He's
remember.
Kong.
King Kong.
King Kong.
Yeah, he
King
was
Kong,
Caesar and
Peter
King
Jackson's
Kong. I
King
don't think
Kong.
he did anything else after that though, or before that.
Might
Yeah,
be
but it's nice to see him on the screen in Andy Serkis form, and I think to have his arm get ripped off in Age of Ultron, he gets kicked down the stairs, and that was kind of it. And then in this one, they kill him off kind of quick towards the end. Like I was hoping for more of a Claw-esque build up, and now we don't get any of that because he's dead. So that I did not really like. But again, I don't know how integral of a character he is to the overall Black Panther universe. So maybe he is one of those smaller kind of side villains where he doesn't have that much exposure. But to me, they built him up to be a really, really cool villain, and then they kind of off him like that, which I didn't really think was that cool. So I don't like really how they went about Claw in the MCU. So that was kind of a detractor for me. Um, there was one more kind of, this is more of a continuity thing. Towards the end of it, when Everett Ross is in the ship and he's trying to shoot down all the other ones, the room he's in is an all glass ceiling, and there's a enemy ship shooting at the glass, trying to, kind of break it, trying to get into the room and kill him. Let's say that's what's trying to happen. So in the end of it, he does shoot down all of these ships leaving Wakanda airspace. And right as his ship, forget if it crashes or if it blows up, he falls to the ground and the floor, and the ship breaks the glass. It gets through, it punctures the glass, and exposes the room with him in it. But the scene kind of cuts off there, and I know it's right at the end to where um, T'Challa kind of regains control of like the Wakandan forces, and he gets everyone else to kind of back down. So it's assumed that maybe whoever's piloting that ship also backs down and doesn't want to kill Everett Ross. But to me, you're at this scene, this sequence where there's a big time crunch because the structural integrity of the window is being degraded by this ship shooting at it. But when it finally blows up the glass, you kind of see Everett Ross just run up some kind of staircase, and the ship kind of just goes off. Like, to me, that kind of just cuts it off. You might have to rewatch the movie to really understand like the sequence of events in that one scene. But that kind of was kind of okay. So there was no real like resolution to this. He kind of leaves Everett Ross. He doesn't try to kill him anymore. Like, things just kind of fizzle off like that. That was just a small kind of bit that I picked up on while I was watching that. It could just be me nitpicking like I tend to do in some of these movies. So, but I thought I would put that here. That's just another thing I saw that didn't quite sit with me. But you might have to rewatch that scene just to understand it. But the positives that you talked about, Chad, I mean, I agree with completely. This was a fantastic movie. I said I do rewatch Infinity War a good bit because I can rewatch that one, but I think Black Panther is probably one of Marvel's most rewatchable movies, in my opinion. I can always go back and watch it almost any time and enjoy it the same way I did the first time I saw it.
Absolutely. Dylan, you haven't talked about this one, right?
Yeah, I mean, everyone said kind of all the positives. The one negative for me is the fact that the practical effects are so good that the visual effects look very bad in comparison. Like, those big rhinos look so awful, but the practical effects are so good and really immerse you in the culture. I think it's the best standalone film of this list in terms of, like, I could watch it separate from the MCU and totally understand it, get it, feel engrossed by it. I don't need any prior knowledge of anything, even the Claw stuff, which really helps. And I think that's why it was Best Picture nominated, because the Academy didn't have to watch all the Marvel movies to like it. Whereas people are saying, why didn't you nominate No Way Home? Because as good as it is, you kind of, the more movies you've seen in the Spider-Man universe, the more you can appreciate that film. Whereas I didn't think the Academy was going to bite there. Whereas here it makes sense because it's very standalone, tells a great story, Gladiator-esque. Love the duels. Winston Duke's great. Michael B. Jordan, favorite villain in the MCU. Love it. That's all I have to say. It's great.
Hell yeah. Well, I think we've rounded it out. We've talked about all the movies. It was 11. It was a daunting task. We're over 2 hours in now.
Do we have a final
Um,
ranking?
So yeah, Kerri,
Yeah.
did
Wait,
you
did
do?
Kerri talk about Black Panther?
I did not actually.
I am so sorry, Kerri.
I
I
thought
will
we missed
touch
her.
on it quickly.
No, as much as you want to say. Go
This
ahead.
is a fantastic movie, obviously. I guess maybe some stuff I didn't really super hear thrown out there already. I mean, I agree with what everyone said already. Just the characters in this are really amazing. We get introduced to Shuri. We get introduced to, oh my God, I'm blanking on everyone's name. Nakia, T'Challa's mom. We get a lot more from Okoye this movie. I even like Everett Ross. I actually agree with your guys' criticisms of Claw. I actually really don't like Claw in this movie. That's my one.
He's
I'm
just
on an island.
like, why is he so annoying in the movie? Like, why, if he's such a great villain, why does he have all these weird
and
lines?
even Killmonger and his dad, Sterling K. Brown, plays. That I just love that you can empathize with this villain. This villain has a very like a tragic backstory and has some good points and points that I think, like you guys said, T'Challa actually took away and learned from. Just a beautiful film. I will touch on, actually, you guys have brought up the visual effects. There was recently, I think, like an op-ed by someone who works in one of the visual effects studios, who said especially the train scene is kind of the result of Marvel pushing a ton of last minute changes on the visual effects people, and not let, they basically have to, in order to win the Marvel contract, they have to have basically no budget. So it's a ton of people. Very few people working way overtime on these last minute changes, and that some of these directors like Ryan Coogler, like a lot of the indie directors that Marvel is hiring, which is fantastic, they aren't really getting the proper support for how to visualize some of these big action sequences. But yeah, that's it. This is an amazing movie. I mean, I had it at number 2. It could have easily been number 1 a different day of the week.
Absolutely. And hopefully Wakanda Forever can learn from those mistakes, not Ryan Coogler, but Marvel. So hopefully
well, it
that
seems
will
like because some of the show's visuals aren't that great. Maybe they did put a lot of their effort into Wakanda Forever, and that's why the show's visuals don't look that good. But I don't know. We'll see.
There you go. Maybe. All right. So it looks like we're done talking about all the movies now. So we can go ahead. It's a longer one because, there are 11 movies to talk about this time. And we had Dylan in the mix, which we love. So we had a lot of great thoughts here to talk about. So Kerri, do we have a final ranking here?
Yeah, we do. And Dylan, I think, has also been tracking along with me, so you can double check me if I.
Yeah. I've just been writing stuff down so I know where people had stuff so I could judge y'all. I'm kidding. No,
Okay.
I just wrote them down to make sure we didn't talk about some. Okay, yeah, we talked about all of them.
Okay, so coming in last place, we have Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Number 11.
Yep, number 11. Number 10, we have Doctor Strange. At number 9, we have Captain Marvel. At number 8, Spider-Man Far From Home. Number 7, Spider-Man Homecoming.
Oh, that works out.
Number 6, Thor Ragnarok.
And here's our top 5.
Yep. Number 5, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Number 4, Avengers Infinity War. Number 3, Captain America Civil War. Number 2, Avengers Endgame. And number 1, Black Panther.
That is a solid ranking. We did a great job, you guys.
Did a good job. That's tough. That's tough.
Definitely.
This was by far, I think, the most variability we've had in our rankings. We've generally been pretty consistent for like the lowest and the highest, and maybe in the middle had a little bit of variation. This was pretty, the numbers are, higher. We just had like a bigger mix of what people enjoyed the most.
I think the reason being is because all of these movies are range from like good to great. There's not like any movie like a clear Iron Man 2 or Thor the Dark World that we can just go like, yeah. So even like, somebody who ranks Ant-Man and the Wasp super low Some of us just might have it a little bit higher, whatever. But yeah, so that's kind of why that's there. However, now we can close this out. I had a great time talking Marvel with you guys. But yeah, we'll go ahead and start to the left. Kerri, where can people find you?
Oh my gosh. When we actually one day have time to film it, Chad and I are on a horror show, YouTube show, theoretically on a weekly basis, although it's been tough in the summer to find time to film. But we discuss all things horror movies. It's called Welcome to Primetime.
On the Nerd Entertainment Network. Please check that out. We did we had a Nope discussion recently.
Yeah.
We have plans on continuing with more Jordan Peele stuff. We're trying to do Get Out and Us soon. A lot of great stuff. We did TV, movies. We did Midnight Mass, which is a super underrated TV show. Just check out a lot of that stuff because we have some really great discussions with our buddy Hunter Chambliss. Really fun time. So for me, you can find me over at the Dill Pickle Movie Network doing Picture This. It's a show where every month we talk a year of the Oscars. It's the best picture stuff that we talk about. We have a slate of movies, sometimes 5, sometimes more, that we talk about, and we rank them. We talk about the actors and actresses, the ceremony itself, and the year itself. A lot of the times, we're in the middle of a series right now. It's the Lord of the Rings series, and we did 2001 last month. We did 2002 this month, and then 2003 next month in September. We're just trying to see if the Lord of the Rings stack up and actually are the best of the slate. Who knows? We'll find that out. Pretty soon.
Maybe there will be more Andy Serkis love there than there was today here.
Perhaps. And then I also do a lot of debate over at the Movie Battlegrounds on TMG Entertainment. I'd love to do the debate stuff. I can't remember what's released, so I won't really announce anything. I know I was in a title match. I don't think that's dropped yet. Against Henry. Confidential Henry Sanchez. It was a pretty good time. I don't think there's anything else to plug for me. So, James, do you have anything to plug?
Nah, you can find me on this channel whenever we do rankings.
Perfect. And Dylan, do you have anything to plug?
Chad plugged my channel too. So yeah, Dill Pickle Movie Network. I'm doing reviews as well there. I don't know when this is airing, but towards the end of August, I will have a best of summer 2022 list, which is interesting because there are no Marvel movies on it. So that'll be fun. Just because there were a lot of good summer movies this year. That's all I have to say. Thanks
any cool draft days coming up or anything?
We got, well, maybe not cool to you, Chad, but we do have a Game of Thrones draft day coming up soon.
Good show.
It may have aired already when this is coming out. I have no idea yet. I got to try and find a time to record that. But some fun guests. We'll be talking about that show. Maybe some people loved the last season. Maybe some people don't. Maybe some people love the show. Maybe some people don't. We'll see. It'll be fun to see. I don't know what the next one is yet.
Yeah, and that's the first. That's the first of the TV draft days, right?
Yes, and it's in inspiration for House of the Dragon, which I believe will have premiered by the time draft day starts. But next month, we're getting another series about another property that we also have to be covering on Picture This. So maybe we'll have to rope in Lord of the Rings draft day next month, perhaps. Maybe.
Yeah. Cool. And draft day is draft stuff from series, shows, movies.
It's like a fantasy football draft, except the players are movies or TV shows.
Yep. So it's a great show. Check that out. Check out that channel. There's a lot of great stuff over there. Watch the other videos in this channel. We did all the MCU phases except for the Phase 4, which we'll do when that concludes. We've done Edgar Wright. Christmas tier ranking we did, which was really fun. Harry Potter or Wizarding Worlds. Is there another we did that I'm forgetting? I think that might be it.
I think that's
Edgar Wright. We did Edgar Wright. That was our first one. I already said that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, so we did all of that. A lot of fun stuff. We have plans maybe of doing Star Wars, and Denis Villeneuve, I think, might be the next on the slate. So we'll look to getting that out sooner than later. Thank you everybody for watching. For Kerri, for me, for James, and for Dylan. We had a great time talking MCU. Thank you again. See you next time. And are you ranking with me?